Welcome everyone to Clearing the Smoke, what every school and family needs to know about vaping. As during the introduction, if you have a moment, please put your name and your role and where you're from in the chat so we have a sense of who our audience is tonight. After our welcome and introduction, each panelist will speak for about 15 minutes. And at the end of the presentations, we've set aside 15 minutes for your questions and your comments. If you may put a question in the chat while a presenter is speaking, but just know that we will get to it at the end of the webinar. This webinar will be recorded and it will be posted on the South Carolina School Improvement Council and CFEC social media sites in a few days. And we'll also share a vaping resource guide and a presenter contact information sheet in the chat. And that will also be emailed to you the next day. So tonight, our panelists will be Alan Easler with Cornerstone, Ryan Poston with St. James High School in Horry County, Karen Utter with the South Carolina School Improvement Council and the Carolina Family Engagement Center. We also have Jessica Gibson with Behavioral Health Services of Pickens County and Ivey Stone with Pickens County Youth Board. And finally, we have Terra with Smokefree, South Carolina. So it's going to be, we have an excellent panel of presenters, and I think you're really going to enjoy this tonight. But we'll begin with a message from our host, Karen Utter.
Thank you, Lorelei, and good evening and welcome to everyone. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us tonight. As Lorelei mentioned, I am Karen Utter. I am the project director for the Carolina Family Engagement Center and associate director of the South Carolina School Improvement Council. And I just want to take a moment to thank Lorelei Swanson, who is one of our regional family engagement liaisons, for all of the hard work and dedication she put into putting this webinar together. She did an awesome job. So just a word before we get started about who we are at the Carolina Family Engagement Center. We are the official statewide family engagement center for South Carolina under the Every Student Succeeds Act. We're federally funded. We have 17 partner schools currently across South Carolina. But in addition to those 17 partner schools with whom we work very closely over the course of 2 to 4 years, we also provide one-time training, technical assistance, materials, all at no cost to any school that requests it or families as well. And our whole goal, our whole reason for being is really to strengthen the partnerships between schools, families, and communities to improve student outcomes. And then I also wanted to say a word about the School Improvement Council. Our executive director, Quantina Hegwood, is going to be joining us shortly. She couldn't be here right at the beginning. She was teaching tonight. But we at the School Improvement Council, you may be familiar with us if you're an SIC member joining us tonight. We're the state-funded organization that provides guidance, resources, and support for the over 1,100 SICs in schools across South Carolina. And those SICs are intended to connect parents, educators, students, and community members to promote school improvement. And among the many areas in which SICs work are issues related to student health and wellness, which vaping is certainly one. So I'll hand it back to Lorelei here.
Thank you, Karen, for sharing information about the South Carolina School Improvement Council and the Carolina Family Engagement Center. And thank you for being the host of this webinar. We'll now get started and turn it over to Alan Easler.
Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Get my screen shared here. There we go. All right, so there's going to be about 100 slides to go through, but we're going to try to get through it in 15 minutes or so. But we'll just kind of want to talk about is vapes in general and give you an example of the marketing and the way this, if you're not familiar with what the ingredients are, what the products look like and whatnot. But first off, I want to talk a little bit about just a plug for the agency that I work for, which is Cornerstone, which is the Alcohol and Drug Abuse Commission for Greenwood, Edgefield, McCormick, and Abbeville counties. So you'll see a good many pictures from our neck of the woods. But I also live in Saluda County, so you're going to see some photos from Newberry and Saluda and Batesburg, Leesville, that area, which is the area of the county I live near. So Cornerstone is part of what's called the 301 system in South Carolina. And not sure if you know it, that back in 1973, the General Assembly enacted Act 301, which created a system of substance use treatment agencies in every county in the state. And then we work with the state agency. It's now called the State Office of Substance Use Services at the South Carolina Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Disabilities, because that's where mental health and behavioral health, developmental disabilities joined in together as one agency. Previously, we were part or partners with the South Carolina Department of Alcohol and Other Drug Abuse Services. So all told, there are, I believe, 31 county level agencies with offices in all 46 counties in South Carolina, and we provide prevention, intervention, treatment, and recovery services. And we just celebrated 50 years of service back in 2023, and you can find a full list of all the agencies and the counties that we serve at the Behavioral Health Association's website at communitiesforrecovery.com. So let's get into talking about vapes. These have exploded, particularly in the past 10 years. And we know that they are marketed to youth and young adults with bright colors and cartoonish packaging, funny sounding or fruity flavors, comical, playful, or irreverent names. Problem is they still contain addictive ingredients and chemicals with long-lasting harmful effects. So this picture is just a sampling of some of the vapes that have been found as litter at our office in Greenwood. And I'm sure those at schools have found plenty of these as well. The problem is, at first glance, which one of these contains nicotine and which one contains something else? Because vapes can contain nicotine, but they can also be flavored oils without any nicotine, or they could also contain marijuana or cannabinoids and other synthetics. The big thing with vapes is there are no absolutes. You just cannot be sure exactly what that product, that vape may actually contain. Now, the vast majority of them are probably going to be nicotine, but you just can't be 100% sure. No matter the device, there's 4 basic elements to it, and there's a heating element called an atomizer. You got to have a power source, such as a rechargeable battery. There's got to be a container or cartridge which holds the e-liquid, and then you've got to have the e-liquid or vape juice, or there's various different names for it. This matters because according to Stanford University in 2024, nearly 6% of middle and high school students reported being current e-cigarette users. I kind of think that's a little low. But that's the research out of Stanford University. We know with nicotine vape aerosol, it is not just water vapor. Yes, it contains fewer harmful chemicals than the mix of 7,000 chemicals in tobacco cigarette smoke, but safer does not mean safe. It still contains nicotine, a highly addictive compound, and that harms adolescent brain development. It also has formaldehyde and acrolein, which can lead to cancer. You have ultrafine particles of heavy metals, which can cause tissue damage in the lungs. You have artificial flavorings, which they may be safe to eat, but not to inhale. We know that it still impacts nicotine addiction, which is essentially being unable to stop despite the fact that using affects your relationships, impacts performance at work and school, and causes financial hardships. And we do hear of people dual using vaping and tobacco cigarettes. So now you're increasing your exposure to nicotine, to tobacco, and worsening respiratory health issues. We also hear about seizures, particularly through the FDA has a number of reported seizures, primarily due to nicotine overdoses. What the thought is, defective batteries when they're charging, having fires and explosions. We know that it impacts during pregnancy, leading to low birth weight and potential damage to the fetal brain. And then there's also EVALI, which I know if you haven't heard, is essentially a vaping associated lung injury. E-cigarettes however, may have the potential to benefit adults who smoke if vapes are being used as a substitute for smoked tobacco products. So we'll kind of get into that a little bit of the history that the person who initially created a vape pen or patented the vape pen patented for the idea of cessation. In terms of the benefits, researchers they still have a lot to learn in terms of the short and long-term effects and whether or not the e-cigarettes truly have that benefit. So talking about the history of e-cigarettes, the first patent for a electronic vaporizer dates back to 1927, and in 65 there was a patent for a smokeless cigarette. 86 you had a plastic cigarette with paper-soaked nicotine. But in 2003, a Chinese pharmacist patented the modern e-cigar design, and he designed it for smoking cessation. 2007 international patents, and pretty much upon that point, the designs were copied illegally by U.S. and Chinese firms. And in 2010s, we saw the big tobacco companies starting to enter the market. So this is kind of an illustration of how they have progressed over time, going from cig-a-lights to vape pens to mod tanks to pod-based, and then to now with these single-use disposables that we seem to see everywhere. The liquid, it's called vape juice, e-juice, e-liquid, e-fluid. The nicotine vape ingredients are primarily propylene glycol, glycerin, flavorings, and nicotine salts. Cannabis vapes, instead of nicotine, they would have delta 8, delta 9, THCA, HHC. There's a myriad of acronyms of different cannabinoids. And they're going to be held, these e-liquids either going to be held in a refillable vape tank, a non-refillable pod or cartridge, or it would be in these disposable non-refillable devices. There's a difference that we kind of have to get into talking about free-base nicotine versus nicotine salts. And this is where vapes, the nicotine salt is where vapes come into play, but it's because nicotine salt essentially is a solution that was created when a nicotine base is combined with an acid. And that acid makes it more comfortable to consume at higher doses, makes nicotine more comfortable to consume at higher doses. It lowers the pH balance and causes less irritation in the throat and lungs. So you get a higher dose, more intense high, and it appears that the body absorbs that salt nicotine faster, which increases the desire for more. Still a lot of more research to be done on it. Propylene glycol, you may have heard of it because it's a food additive. It's de-icing. It's also the smoke machine. It's in the smoke machines for theaters, and particularly since we're coming near here on Halloween. Again, we're still learning how it impacts the lungs when you're actually breathing it in. The same with glycerin. It's a food additive. Also added to frosting to prevent it from setting too hard. Flavorings. You have umpteen different kinds of flavorings that come into play. The problem is we don't know what happens when you actually breathe these in versus eating those. 2009, the Family Smoking Prevention and Tobacco Control Act banned the use of all artificial natural flavors, but it only applied to cigarettes, not to e-cigarettes or vapes. Why are we concerned about flavor vapes? Because according to research from Stanford University, among the youth who vape, 87.6% used a flavored e-cigarette. And in 2020, the FDA kind of start playing catch up, decided to ban flavored pod-based vapes that were used by Juul, Vuse, Novo. So only tobacco flavor and menthol were allowed. Well, this just allowed the explosion, the proliferation of disposables. But, and these disposables have that rechargeable battery. They're pre-filled with e-juice. And there are thousands of flavors, and you throw it away when you're empty. Problem is they're difficult to recycle, potential to cause fires, also seeing issue with littering, and the brands are constantly changing. When we say thousands of flavors, this is just a snapshot of some of the products on a vape shop in Greenwood, more vape shops in Greenwood, just thousands, hundreds of flavors, and you'll see puffs per device. Is this a marketing ploy? Whatever it is, we know the juice capacity has increased over time from the first ones of 400 puffs, which is essentially the equivalent of a pack of cigarettes, to 800 puffs, to 1,500 puffs, 3,000 puffs, 5,000 puffs. Options where you can have a higher or lower dose, 30,000, 50,000. I've seen as high as 60,000 on the market. So 60,000 puffs would be approximately 3,000 packs of cigarettes. And the price point is so much lower so that the fact that two 5,000 puffs Lost Mary style vapes would be the equivalent of 5 cartons of cigarettes, so it's significantly cheaper price point. So you found a vape, you sure it's a nicotine vape? Again, there's no absolutes, because here's what some of the cannabis ones that look like. This is my local gas station just down the road from my house in Saluda. Vape shopping, a gas station in Greenwood, in the similar product. And the reason we have these on the market is because 2008 federal farm bill redefined hemp as a cannabis plant containing less than 0.3% delta THC. They left some loopholes in there that specifically did not mention or ban these Delta 8s and other products. And so the manufacturers use this loophole to manufacture or create all these different types of quote unquote legal cannabinoids. And most of these are actually created, well, pretty much all of these are created in lab with exception of CBD. The rest of these a lot of times are being manufactured in a lab by taking CBD and manipulating it. They're adding or taking away molecules from it. Again, they're pretty much all made in a lab, and they're usually more powerful than the natural cannabinoids in the plants themselves. And the FDA does not regulate this, and they're not tested for quality, they're not tested for safety, anything like that. Again, these vapes are being sold in the same shelves, in the same gas stations, in the same vape shops as the nicotine vapes. There's no laws in place for minimum age, no FDA regulations, and it's big business. This is a report out of Forbes that in 2022, Delta 8 THC generated $2 billion in revenue. So here's one gas station in Greenwood. And what's circled is the THC vapes or cannabinoid vapes. Here's another gas station with the cannabinoid vapes. Another one, cannabinoid vapes. Here's a larger display at a gas station in Greenwood. Rather large display at another gas station. And there's so many different listings, and they'll have all these different types of cannabinoids in them. They may be quote unquote legal, but they're still not safe. They're still mind altering. It's still psychoactive, and the users can meet the criteria for dependence or addiction according to the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. Users are still going to likely to test for THC, which for adults, it ends up meaning that people losing jobs are not getting jobs, and we're seeing numerous poisonings or medical emergencies. This is something from an organization where that tracks the different emergency department visits as reported through news reports and also through the Federal Drug Warning Awareness Network. We know kind of what marijuana, we kind of know what it does in terms of the short-term effects and the long-term effects. The long-term effects is the biggest issue in terms of how it's impacting memory and learning, but also the health issues. We're really starting to see more issues with schizophrenia, paranoia, psychosis, hallucinations, particularly in people who are genetically predisposed, but also depression and suicidal behavior. So the marketing, how market matters, because 43% who vaped in 2022 got it from a retail source despite not being old enough to purchase them. And we kind of know what the shops look like in our community. It's a retail outlet in Greenwood, vape shop in Abbeville, Newberry, some more vape shops, what they look like inside, but also the price, having the ads at the gas pump or on the handle of the door at the gas station, but also the post online where they're advertising, the 60,000 puffs, or, let's Valentine's, or in Greenwood, the Lander University mascot is the Bearcat. So this vape shop flavor of the week is Bearcat Fever. Or you want to celebrate July 4th with Bombsicle flavored vape. Black Friday sales, 12 days of Christmas sales. But then we've also early on saw cartoon character vapes. We're not seeing them quite as much as we used to, but you're still seeing things like where it's easily concealable. Who else would be interested in that other than someone who doesn't want to get caught? We also have seen these are where the car, this uses a replaceable cart. It's the Baby Yoda is actually a rechargeable battery. But you're also seeing key fob vapes, again, where you use a replaceable cart or refillable cart, and that cart slips inside what looks to be a key fob, but it's actually a battery that powers the atomizer for the vape. We've seen video game vapes where you can actually play Pac-Man and Tetris and Jet Fighter games on them. You also have vapes that have a 360-degree screen. Now, who does that silhouette sort of look like? If you're a football fan, you may recognize that it looks similarly to Patrick Mahomes. I'm sure he's not endorsing this product, but it looks a lot like him. And then you have vapes with Bluetooth functions similar to a smartwatch, speakers with refillable mods, and you have the celebrity endorsements of Mike Tyson, Hulk Hogan, Dennis Rodman, Cheech and Chong, of course, Snoop Dogg, of course. And once it's available on the internet, it won't be long till it's also in a retail outlet. This is a vape that the charging device for it looks essentially like an earbud storage case, and it's a pod-based vape. Um, That's actually a cannabis vape, but it would not be surprised that if you don't start seeing something like this on the nicotine side as well. You have a nasal vape. I have not seen any of these in the store, but I've seen them online. Just the novelty purpose of it. The biggest thing is our message at Cornerstone and in the alcohol and drug field is if you're parents and you're adults with influence over kids, starting a conversation about drugs does not have to be awkward, and it's never too early or too late to have these conversations. Our state partners at OSIS have this website called openconversationssc.com that you can get great tips on how to start these conversations. And if you know somebody who needs help, EmbraceRecoverySC.com has a listing of resources across the state, because our ultimate goal is to get people into recovery, because we know that people can and do recover and they go on to lead healthy lives. If you want to keep up to date with fads and trends, there's some national people here. One is Jermaine Tallcop Galloway. He does a monthly newsletter that helps you with trends and whatnot. Deputy Dave Gomez has parenting tips and ideas. And then Smart Approaches to Marijuana has a weekly drug report email that also talks about kind of national fads and trends. And if we'll hold the questions to the end. And I know I went a little over my time.
Thank you, Ellen. No, that was great. We got started a little bit early, so that was perfect. Thank you for sharing information with your expertise about vapes and the potential harm of vapes and how to identify them in your school community. Now our next panelist is Ryan Poston and Karen Utter.
So thank you so much, Alan, for all of that information. I think I'm just a little bit blown away by all the various kinds of vaping paraphernalia there is. So we were very lucky to have with us today Ryan Poston, who's the principal of St. James High School in Murrells Inlet, and that's in Horry County. And the way I got to know Ryan was actually I helped him out with one of his school improvement councils when he was at a school in York County. And then when he was at St. James, their SIC wanted to get some technical assistance in terms of being more active. And I know that one of the issues that came up with the parents on the SIC quite a bit was vaping. Now, this was a couple of years ago. So I thought I would go back to Ryan and ask him if he wouldn't mind sharing with us a little bit about where his school was a couple of years ago when I was visiting his SIC, and then kind of give sort of from the administrator's perspective. And of course, this is just one principle, but I think it's helpful to hear about an issue from a lot of different lenses. So Ryan, thank you for joining us.
Absolutely.
And so could you tell us a little bit about St. James High, where you currently serve? Just a little bit about what it's like there.
Yeah, St. James is a large, comprehensive high school. Like you said, we're in Murrells Inlet, South Carolina. We serve about 1,800 students, grades 9 through 12. We have a fairly diverse student population with a varied socioeconomic footprint. We have some of the very wealthy folks that live on the beach in Garden City and Surfside. Those communities are served by our school. But at the same time, we have a poverty rate of just at 50%. So we pride ourselves on having a very strong sense of community, a lot of school spirit there. We are known for high academic standards. Our students score really, really well, typically in tests, and we also have very strong CTE programs. Do a lot of work to emphasize student connection, wellness, and achievement. But like so many other schools, we face the challenges of student vaping, both nicotine and THC, which, as you heard earlier, is one of the fastest growing behavioral and health issues in schools all across our country.
Yeah. So talking about the vaping, I just remember briefly at that time, which was again a couple years ago, they were talking about, the parents were talking about, kids were bringing in the vaping paraphernalia in the school, using it on school grounds, in the bathroom, and that's really, I think, probably where your involvement is most relevant since that's your territory.
Yeah.
Do you want to describe a little bit about what that was like, some of the issues, how it impacted students?
Sure. So, I've been at St. James High School for 4 years. And when I first got there, like all people do when they come to a new school, you're looking at your survey data. And one of the things that stood out to me was that the students gave very low scores on the surveys in terms of the cleanliness of the restrooms. And that started kind of a deep dive with students and parents, and a theme kept kind of developing out of that, which was students said they didn't feel comfortable using the restrooms at school. And they were primarily saying that they didn't feel comfortable because of the amount of vaping that was occurring in the restrooms. And they felt like they would go in and the rooms were constantly filled with smoke and vapor and the other things. And so then we started kind of honing in on, all right, well, if this is an issue, how do we address that? And we started finding a lot of the vapes, like Mr. Easler mentioned earlier, whether they look like USBs, hoodie strings, pens, highlighters, toys. It was just things that that they were easy to conceal. And then we were worried because we started seeing a trend in the THC vapes coming in as well. I think what really kind of brought it to a head for us was that first year that I was at the school. Um, we had, and this was probably one of the scariest things I've ever been through as a school administrator. We had a student that was vaping, or had been vaping, using a nicotine vape, um, but he was also taking gabapentin. And gabapentin is one of those drugs that students, not just students, but people in general will use because it can increase a high that they feel. It makes the buzz stronger, so to speak. Um, and so he actually, with that combination, he collapsed in a restroom, and was unresponsive. And so obviously staff rushed in. We had to resuscitate him, use CPR, the AED. Now, the positive of this is that he ultimately was okay. Um, but we had a clear lesson from that. And it was that these things are dangerous, and that we had to be more proactive in the way that we were addressing them, to make sure that these kinds of things didn't continue to happen.
So could you talk about what kinds of strategies that you use to help make progress and help to gain improvements in what was going on at school?
Absolutely. So I think we kind of looked at this in three different strategies. First, being education and awareness. So we believe that you should teach the dangers directly. Speak with kids about nicotine addiction and chemical exposure and the mental health impact that it has. I think kids need to know that nicotine and THC alter brain chemistry. Um, and that students who vape, and it's interesting because you will talk with kids and they'll say, well, I can't focus if I don't have it on board, right? But we actually know that students who vape actually have more anxiety and irritability and trouble focusing. Um, and so they may feel stressed when they don't vape, but we recognize that that's because of the withdrawal and some of the other things that they're dealing with. So, um, using advisory lessons or SIC presentations, health class lessons, and other interactions with students to educate them um, on what vaping actually is and is doing to them. I think the second thing that we have done is we've tried to go and put very clear policies in place with consequences. Um, And I would say that ours our consequences for it are pretty stiff, but they're not. We don't believe in just punishing. We also have cessation programs that we use along with that. So we use Vape Educate, or skip program if the student, if it's a THC vape, trying to look at it, and even in my communications with parents, that it's not a discipline issue, it's a health issue, right? And so obviously there is a consequence for doing it, but we recognize that it's an addiction, and so we need to try to provide the supports that the students need to break that addiction. And then we also have some environmental controls. That's probably our third strategy. So we installed vape detectors in our restrooms. We increased supervision in those hot spots. We trained staff to identify the devices. We search every kid every day. So when they walk into the building, everybody goes through weapons detection systems and has bag checks. We do clear bags. Um, and I think that the results that we have seen, while we have not um, stopped vaping from occurring at school, right? The students now, when you survey them about our bathrooms, they don't feel the way that they used to feel. They feel like they're comfortable in the restroom. They feel like that they're safe in the restroom, and that they know that there are people that are around to try to help with that. I think the parents appreciate that we're trying to be proactive in educating and working with them to help make the school safe and comfortable for their kids.
That's great. So I wanted to also bring up one thing that Alan touched on in his presentation. I think you mentioned it, and your parents and your SIC mentioned as well. And that's the issue of the vape shops marketing directly to students. And I think you mentioned something about you have some that are pretty close to your school building.
I think we have 20 vape shops within a mile or two of our high school. Now, again, we're in a vacation destination, so they're all over the place where we are. And yes, we've definitely seen some marketing strategies. Um, I walked by and they had it was a gummy bear poster in the window that said "Your friendly neighborhood candy shop," and that was the way that they were
Yeah.
advertising. And actually, there were some parents that from our school that voiced enough displeasure that got taken down. Um, but, and I think that when you start talking about, well, how do we address this? I don't think it can just be schools. It can't just be parents. It's also got to be policymakers. You think in the state of South Carolina right now, we have a distance buffer for alcohol sales in schools. I think it's 300 feet in municipalities and 500 feet in unincorporated areas. That you can't have a liquor store within that distance of a school. There is no limitation for vape shops. There are no regulations. Now, some municipalities may do it. Surfside Beach, where we are, recently did one. I think theirs is 1,000 feet of daycares, churches, and libraries. So that's a municipal regulation that's been put in place. But you get in the county or in the other areas that are unincorporated, and there are no regulations on that. And I think that that's something that um, I think that there should be some clear guidelines on that, the same way that there are with alcohol distribution. And I would say even maybe more so, because at least alcohol distribution, there are clear regulations in terms of what that does to the body and for who is allowed to purchase that, right? Where we don't see that. And I think that as you came out of the pandemic, we have seen shifts with students in this as well. When I was at York Comprehensive High School as principal, kind of pre and up to just after the pandemic, you were starting to kind of see the rise in vaping. And then I think when kids were home, and then a lot of times they were unsupervised at home because parents were still having to work and do all the things. I think that we saw an uptick in that. Now, from a discipline side of school, we didn't because they weren't there. But then they came back into school and they're managing all the things that came out of COVID. And I think that the burst or the rise in the sales of these things on the internet have caused us to see a much higher rate of kids using post pandemic.
Well, Ryan, I really appreciate your sharing your perspective on this. And is there anything else that you wanted to add just in closing in terms of what you've seen, what you would like to see happen, any suggestions for parents or educators?
Yeah, I would say first, I think that we cannot, we have to keep in mind the mental health connection that comes with this. I think that if we are not talking about vaping and mental health in the same conversation, we're really kind of missing the mark. Um, Teens vape because they believe that it's helping them with stress and anxiety and focus, but the science on that is clear. That we know that is not the case. Nicotine and THC, they both disrupt normal brain development, and they can actually make your anxiety and depression worse. These high potency THC vapes are particularly concerning. As Mr. Easler said earlier, they're linked to psychosis in at risk individuals, and they have some long term cognitive effects. Again, we've had students report panic attacks, extreme paranoia from taking some of these THC oils. So I think that those are things that are concerned. And I think, second, we got to have collective action. Um, Schools can't educate and enforce. They can, but we can't do it alone. Parents have to have better information. Law enforcement needs stronger tools. Again, there aren't the laws to regulate this the way that there are some of the other things. And policymakers need to close some of the regulatory gaps that we have. And most importantly, I think we need to listen to our kids. I think that vaping is a symptom of stress, pressure, and misinformation. And if all we're doing is punishing, and don't take the chance to understand why they are doing the things that they're doing, then we're not going to be able to properly address it. We got to combine education, support, and accountability, and give the students a healthier path forward. At the end of the day, I think this is all about protecting our kids from an industry that thrives on addiction, whether it's nicotine or THC. I think we all have to take collective action to try to make sure that the schools are safe and healthy places for our kids to learn.
Ryan, thank you so much. That I learned a lot, and I really appreciate your sharing your perspective as an administrator with us. Lorelai, I'm going to turn it back to you.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Karen and Ryan. Thank you for sharing information about the problems you're experiencing with students and vaping in your high school, and also all your great ideas for possible solutions. I think it's a perfect lead in for our next presenters, Jessica Gibson and Ivy Stone.
Thank you, Lorelai. Hi, everyone. My name is Jessica Gibson, and I am the Director of Prevention Services at Behavioral Health Services of Pickens County. And I have with me one of my youth board members, Ivy Stone. We'll talk more about her in just a second, but a little bit more about me. I've been at Behavioral Health for 10 years now. Prior to that, I had some experience because I was a youth board member myself in high school at Behavioral Health Services, and continued to work with youth board for 2 more years when I was in college. And I do have my master's in public health with a concentration in community health leadership. Next slide, please. A little bit more about Ivy. She has been a part of our Pickens County Youth Board for 3.5 years now. She served as vice president for us her junior year and automatically rotated into the role of president for this year. She is on the soccer team at Behavioral Health, and she has served as a student liaison for the Pickens High School School Improvement Council. Just a little bit more about Youth Board. It has been a part of the prevention department at Behavioral Health for a little over 35 years now. In fact, there's the very first Youth Board all the way back in 1990. And the circle there is our current executive director, Angela Farmer. She was a part of the Youth Board, so it's a very dear program to our hearts here at BHS. The mission of Youth Board is to serve in our community by providing resources, help, and awareness surrounding substance use prevention, mental health promotion, and suicide prevention to make our community a safe place for youth. When we think about the role of youth in prevention, we want to have them at the table, especially if we're working towards preventing something that is affecting them. And having them serve in prevention can help lead to an access point to build relationships for us as prevention professionals with schools, with getting parents involved, getting surveys completed, having data to back up what we know is happening, and really understand youth trends that are happening in real time. I can have ideas for what I think is going on, but being able to really talk to our youth and having them involved in the conversations is really helpful, because I have an idea, but then they can say, no, Jessica, you're wrong. This is what's going on, or whatever like that. They love interacting and meeting new people outside of their family and outside of their school community. We have our youth board consists of all 4 high schools in Pickens County. And then once you see that prevention's a pathway to be seen as leaders, not just in their schools, but in their community, then they become more eager to use their particular gifts and talents to promote prevention efforts. We might have students who are excellent public speakers, and we might have students who are excellent at artwork. You want to really lean into those gifts and their talents and use them to help you with your prevention efforts. Next slide, please. You also want to make sure that you're meeting them where they are, and that is on social media. You want to give them the opportunity to create content if you have students that you can use to help create the content, because ideas that I have as a millennial will be completely different from ideas that they have to reach their generation. This was the graphic here is what they made for their April Fool's Day joke for social media for this year. So that's a lot of fun. Vape flavored ice cream, you know, because why not? They're putting fun flavors in the actual vape, so why not make ice cream? We use TikTok and Instagram and sometimes Facebook. Youth are actually starting to get more back on Facebook, but up until just recently, Facebook has been for old people. So targeting young people needs to be on TikTok and Instagram, because that's where they are. Next slide, please. We also do a lot of community collaborations. If you have people in your community who are already reaching young people, and it's outside, even outside of the school building, use that, leverage those relationships. We have events at least 4 times a year now. We call them our Guns and Hoses events. They're safe, drug-free, fun activities where people can come out and watch our law enforcement partners, our fire department partners. We do a kickball tournament, we do a softball tournament, we do a flag football tournament, and we do a lip sync battle. We just had our lip sync battle this past Saturday, the 2nd annual one, and we use those opportunities as a fundraiser for Youth Board as well, so that we can continue doing certain educational opportunities in the community. Next slide, please. And I already spoke on this, but leverage those relationships. Let students see the people that they are already aware of. The guy in the middle there is our the SRO for Pickens High School. So he's a really great relationship with the students in his school. Then Chief Beach is on the right there, and our sheriff is there in the middle. So they have these relationships already. Use those relationships to get them the message that they need about vaping. Next slide. All right, now I'm going to hush talking and let you hear from Ivy. So I'm going to ask her these questions. She's going to give you her answers, so that all of this will be from a student perspective. And like I said, she's a student at Pickens High School, senior this year. Ivy, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Hi. So from your experience, how do most students view vaping right now? Is it a problem? Is it a trend? Or is it just normalized at this point?
So for me, when I walk into school, I feel like it's just a normal thing now. So whenever we go into the bathrooms, I think it's like a common knowledge now that you don't go into the big stall bathrooms, because that is like the place that it happens. And as soon as you walk into those bathrooms, you will instantly smell something. So you just have to prepare yourself. So for me, like our lunchroom, the lunch bathroom, we know not to go in there. So while you are in lunch, if you need to use the restroom, you know you're supposed to wait until you get back to class to go to the bathroom. And I don't feel like we should have to do that. And it's way too normalized now.
Very good. Next slide, please. Where do you think, as a student, that schools are missing opportunities to make an impact as it relates to vaping among students?
So I think that since vaping is found so common nowadays, that teachers have tried to like discipline students for it, but now they've tried and it wasn't working. So they just gave up. So right now it looks like they're overlooking the problem instead of finding actions and more solutions to the problem to make it better. So I think they're just overlooking it and not trying anymore because they've seen that it's difficult and they don't know any more solutions, so they just give up.
How important is it for schools to listen directly to students when creating anti-vaping strategies?
Okay, so one thing I've heard, like growing up, like if I'm having a difficult time, parents or teachers will be like, "Oh, I understand. I was a teenager once." But the thing is yes, you were a teenager, but being a teenager in 2025 is completely different than it has been for anybody. So I believe that listening from what the students are saying is most important because we are experiencing what is going on right now and we know what our problem is, but we're trying to help. We're trying to find a solution as well. So we need our schools to listen to us too because we firsthand experience these problems at school.
If you could give one piece of advice to schools that want to reduce vaping, what would it be?
I think keep on enforcing those disciplinary actions because, like I was saying earlier, I think that most students or most teachers now they see that it's a problem, but they just don't know the solution to it, so they just give up. So continuing on and educating our students what they're actually doing and health risks that they are putting upon their bodies, I think continuing telling them that is what will help reduce the problem.
What's one small change that you think schools could make tomorrow, even that might start making a difference in this problem?
So, like I was saying earlier about the disciplinary actions, I think that's a big role. But also, I think it's also important to understand that vaping isn't only a rule violation, it's also a health risk. So, it's most of the time seen as if you're caught vaping, you're going to get put in ISS for a few days. Like, it's it's not taught that you're harming yourself as well as harming others with that secondhand like engagement. Just I think educating them and letting them know that they are hurting themselves and not only getting punished for something.
Thank you, Ivy. If you would like to follow more of Youth Board and what we do in the community, there's our Instagram and TikTok, website, contact information for me if you have any questions after the fact. But thank you for your time. We're done, Lorelai.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. Thank you, Ivy. Thank you so much for sharing the student perspective on vaping and all the work that you're doing, Jessica, with substance abuse and mental health and behavioral health in your community, and how you're really fostering these student leadership roles. So now our final panelist is Terra Bell.
Thank you, Lori. Thank you to all the other speakers before me. It's great information. I'm glad we can work together to help students in South Carolina. So my name is Terra Bell. I work for Smokefree SC. We're a statewide agency focusing on tobacco prevention and control. We do work all across the state. Our main office is located in Columbia. I live in Spartanburg, but like I said, anywhere in the state who needs us, we can go there. We partner with many coalitions and state agencies across South Carolina, such as the Department of Public Health, DAODAS, which is the Department of Alcohol and Other Drug Abuse Services, Smokefree Low Country, Pickens County Youth Board, Jessica and Ivy and their group, the Fire Squad Youth Coalition, Just Say Something in Greer, South Carolina, and Tobacco Free York County Coalition. We have national partners as well, such as the American Cancer Society, the American Heart Association, and the American Lung Association. So we really have 4 areas of focus with what guides our work and where our priorities lie. And those 4 goals came from the 2021 to 2026 South Carolina state plan that focused on tobacco. It was titled "Eliminating the Toll of Tobacco Products in South Carolina." So goal number 1 is to protect youth from tobacco products. Goal number 2 is to increase protections against secondhand smoke. Goal 3 is to reduce adult use of tobacco products. And goal 4 is to strengthen the statewide infrastructure supporting tobacco prevention and control. So why is this important? Obviously you're here, so you care about it. You've heard from all of our other fabulous speakers why it's important. But smoking really just tobacco use, not even just smoking. Tobacco use is the leading cause of preventable death across the world. So if you look at preventable, that means it can be prevented. You just have to not smoke or not use tobacco products. So that is a big message that we're trying to send to South Carolinians, to students when we talk about vaping, is how harmful it is to your body, and how harmful it is to people across the world. We see 7 million deaths per year across the world relating to tobacco use. In the United States, 480,000 deaths per year, and more than 41,000 deaths just from secondhand smoke. So you're not even the one smoking, but you're around smoking in a casino where you work, or a spouse or a partner who smokes around you at home. So that's about 1 in 5 deaths annually, or 1,300 deaths every day attributed to smoking. And on average, smokers die 10 years earlier than non-smokers. And then youth use, that's primarily what we're talking about tonight, right? My title for this presentation is Resources for Schools, but it's really resources for youth. It's resources for parents, anyone who wants to access the information, we share it with them. So South Carolina children are using tobacco products at increasingly high rates, with 20% of high school students using e-cigarettes. That's close to double the national average. This is a statistic from 2023. Alan mentioned 5.9%, but I too think that's a little low. I'm not sure how many students were surveyed for that one, but I think that's low just compared to what we see and what we hear. Nicotine in vapes is more powerful and more addictive than combustible cigarettes. It's synthetic nicotine. That means it's made in a lab. It's not coming from the tobacco plant. And because of that, they can make it as strong and as powerful as they want. Currently in the United States, we don't have laws or regulation about how much nicotine can be in our products, or how strong that nicotine can be. So these vapes are addicting our kids faster than any tobacco products have addicted people in the past. Nicotine use during adolescence is detrimental to critical brain development that's happening during that time. And some scientists theorize that it's possibly permanent. So if they use enough nicotine during their teenage years, their brain is not going to develop the way it needs to by the time they're 24 or 25, because of how negative and how powerful that nicotine is when it comes to the wiring of our brains. And then probably the most scary fact to me is we just don't know that much about vaping. The first vapes hit the US market in 2007, but they didn't become popular with teenagers until about 2018. So that's not a lot of data for scientists, for doctors to study when it comes to this product. And we don't want our younger generations to be the test subjects. So this is the current work of Smokefree SC. If you're focusing on our 4 main areas, we have youth resources, local coalition support, professional development, and point of sale work. Unfortunately, a few months ago, we lost significant federal funding. So we've had to pause a few of our initiatives. Those are the topics you see listed in red. So that's unfortunate for us. We are applying for other grants, trying to bring those programs back. But if you want to go ahead and go to the next slide, that's fine. Primarily tonight, I'm talking about youth resources and how our organization can help you, your school. If you're a parent, we can help your parent groups, your SIC groups, whoever, we can help them. So Vape Talk is a program that we have that is, it's just an informal conversation starter about vaping. We have one program that's for youth and one program that's for middle or high school students. It's meant to be brief. It's 45 minutes is what we prefer, but it covers the most current and accurate information about youth vaping, health consequences for teens, ways adults can have proactive vape talks to discourage teens from vaping, and how youth who are already vaping can access quitting resources. It is endorsed by the South Carolina chapter of the American Academy of Pediatrics, which is a great relationship we have, and we're thankful for their endorsement and their support. So these are the goals of our Vape Talk presentation. The first 3 goals in black are what we have in the youth version. And then that 4th goal in green is only for the adult version. So the adult version has all 4 of the goals and the youth version only has the first 3. So we want to increase knowledge about e-cigarettes and vapes, how they work, what's inside of them. A lot of our youth are using them without having any idea what's inside of them because they're focused on that flavor. They have no idea that nicotine's inside of it. They have no idea what nicotine is. So that first goal really focuses on nicotine and how it's harmful for our brains, our lungs, our hearts, our mental health. So goal number 1 is the biggest portion of the presentation. Goal number 2, we focused on the marketing of it, the deceptive and creative marketing that the tobacco industry, the vape industry is using to try to attract young users to use their products. So we focus, we know with our younger generations, like the injustice of a product being marketed and how people are being tricked into using these products and things like that really resonate with them. So we focus on that in this goal, just how they are being tricked to use a product that's dangerous for their health. Goal number 3, we focus on the why. So why are youth tempted to use these products? We look at youth tobacco surveys that have been completed in South Carolina. And then we also give them tips to saying no, because we know youth are much more likely to say no if they already have an answer in the back of their mind. We also share quitting resources during this goal. And we talk about a few other factors about why vaping is dangerous for our bodies. In this goal, we also cover THC vapes. It's just one of the others. Unfortunately, we're trying to keep this program as short as possible. So we could talk, for hours about vaping and nicotine and THC, but we're trying to keep this short and sweet. So it's a good introductory for schools or for students or parents about vaping. And then the 4th goal that's just for parents or adults interacting with teens is to empower them to have productive and proactive conversations with the youth in their lives about vaping. So we talk about some of the signs to look for if you think your child might be vaping. We give some conversation starters. It's important to talk, with your student or your child, not talk at them. If they feel as if they're being blamed or criticized for something, a lot of the times they're just going to shut down. So it's important to have a positive conversation where you are an encourager, you're a supporter, you're not a disciplinarian or making them feel bad about their choices. So here are some quick frequently asked questions about Vape Talk. So the audience just varies. If we're giving it to students, we like it to be 6th grade or up, just because of the content. 6th grade and higher is the best for that. For parents, we can do it for any age group. Elementary parents, it's really important that elementary parents hear it because a lot of those parents are vaping in front of their students. And we know from data that the number 1 reason why students eventually vape is because a friend or a family member uses that product. So if elementary students are constantly seeing their parents vape, then they're more likely to try that product as they grow up. And then, like Ivy mentioned, the secondhand effects of vaping are severe. We call that secondhand vape aerosol exposure. And if you're vaping in a car with a child, then they're being exposed to those dangerous toxic chemicals as well. So any age group for parents can hear our presentation. And then teachers and staff, again, it can be any grade level for professional development for information that they want to learn about. The presentations can be in person or virtual. We like in person. Schools usually like in person, but sometimes they just can't make in person work. So sometimes virtual is just a backup plan. It can be small classes or large group. Since we had that loss of federal funding a few months ago, we're just asking that at least 15 people are present for it to be an in-person presentation. But if you want us to do class by class, we've stayed at schools all day long. And I've spoken to 8 health classes in a row in one day. I've also done grade levels out of time. So 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, to get them knocked out in one day. So really we're flexible. We adapt to what the school's availability is. Presentation can be anywhere from 30 to 60 minutes, but like I said, 45 minutes is preferred. That gives us enough time to get through the goals without having to rush. If you want a lot of time for questions at the end, maybe an hour is your best chance, but 45 minutes is enough time to get through the presentation without rushing or skipping. There's no cost for the presentation. We're thankful to have funding available to where we don't have to charge schools or parent groups for it. Like I said, if it's in person, we just like to have 15 dedicated people to be there. And this works great as an introductory conversation starter before other evidence-based interventions, which I'm going to talk about in the next few slides. So one of our other popular programs we had were vape disposal kits, where we sent kits to schools where administrators could dispose of vape products that they confiscated from students, because you're technically not supposed to throw these products away because nicotine is considered hazardous waste. But schools don't have any resources about what they are supposed to do with the product. So we would send vape disposal kits, and then we would bring them back to our office, put them in a hazardous waste bin, and ship them off. This was highly popular. We had over 150 vape kits throughout the state, but unfortunately it is paused until we receive additional funding for this product, or this program. And then our next youth resource, we're developing a teen ambassador program, a statewide initiative where we would love to have youth voices to guide what we're doing and to help spread our message to their peers. We would love to connect with your students. We're in the process of planning prevention, cessation, and awareness activities right now. And we know students are much more likely to listen to their peers rather than some strange woman coming into their school who they don't know. So if you're interested in your school getting involved in our Teen Ambassador program, please scan that QR code and just fill out the form, and we can get in touch with, different activities and programs like that we can share with your students. And then real quickly, I'm going to go through 4 other resources that we have for schools. So the first resource isn't, thanks, Lori. The next resource I have isn't necessarily a resource of Smokefree SC, but it is a resource of the Department of Public Health, specifically their Tobacco Prevention and Control section, which we are a close partner of. We work closely with them to do work around the state. It's a free toolkit that schools can access and use when they're implementing tobacco-free policies, vaping policies, and things like that. So within the toolkit, there are 4 main goals. Goal number 1 really focuses on a tobacco-free policy, which all schools in our state are required to have by law. Some are more specific and comprehensive than others. Others probably need to be updated. But it gives you tips to looking at your tobacco-free policy, what you should have included in it, and how you should be updating it on a regular basis. Goal number 2 focuses on the importance of having in-class education about e-cigarettes and vaping, and not just one. So students are much more likely to remember what you tell them if they hear it from multiple angles. So that's why we recommend having a vape talk from Smokefree SC, having students from your local DeOtis Youth Board Coalition, or having speakers from your DeOtis coalition come in and speak, using the Stanford Tobacco Prevention Toolkit, using Truth Initiatives program that they have. So there are multiple different learning modules about vaping and nicotine use in adolescence. And we think it's great if students are being exposed to multiple of those outlets. So this toolkit will give you a list of multiple in-class education components that you could implement. Goal number 3 is clear communication. So not only do you need to have a tobacco policy, but you need to be making sure that it's communicated. You need to have messaging, flyers throughout your school, information you send home to parents, maybe pledges that your students are signing. So goal number 3 in the toolkit really focuses on that. And then goal number 4 is just to promote free quit support to your students. There is a list of cessation programs in the toolkit. There's also a list of cessation services that Smokefree SC shares out. I sent that to Lori, so it should be in the resource guide that you receive, but that's something free that we have. And we also have a vaping in your body flyer that we provide to schools for free as well. So you can reach out if you want any of that information, or if you want to learn more about this toolkit. Next slide. The next resource that I want to talk about for schools is alternative to suspension programs. This is a subject we hear a lot about. Unfortunately, there aren't that many available that are evidence-based interventions. So I'm going to talk about a few of those. But we know that simply relying on suspensions and expulsions is not the answer to creating a safe and productive school environment, especially when it comes to vaping. So we want our kids to know that vaping is not allowed. We have a zero tolerance policy for it at our school. We don't approve of it. It's negative for your health. But a majority of the time, if you send them to ISS or OSS, if it's happened more than than once, they're just going to go home and they're going to be able to vape at home all day while they're there. They're not learning about the negative consequences of it. Why should I not be vaping if I think that it makes me feel better? So since 2014, the U.S. Department of Education has produced a guiding principles resource guide, and it's encouraged schools to use alternative to suspension programs because that really helps the student be in a positive social, emotional, physical, and mental health needs. So you're using evidence-based strategies to address those issues rather than just punitive punishment without realizing why they're vaping and the root cause of that. So on our next slide, we have a few different alternative to suspension programs. So these are all evidence-based interventions. I don't know too much about In-Depth or My Healthy Futures from the Stanford Tobacco Prevention Toolkit. I do know a little bit about Refresh from Playable. We had a great presentation from the CEO of Playable that's recorded on our Smokefree SC website. So if you're interested in learning more about that, you can go to our website and go to our Tobacco Free Partners Roundtable meeting tab, and we have all of those meetings recorded. So just look for the video game based recording and you can watch that. So Playable has Refresh, which is a video game based module. It was developed by Yale, and it focuses on vaping prevention, healthy choice making, risk prevention. And it's neat because it is a video game based program, but it has a parent component as well, which I feel like some alternative to suspension programs don't have. So parents can participate in this if they want. It's not a free service. But if you're interested in pricing or anything like that, we can give that to you and we can put you in contact with Playable to learn more about their programs. And then cessation programs, that's another resource that schools should know about because they should be promoting those resources to their students, right? If you're telling them, hey, you shouldn't vape at school, they need help quitting vaping because remember, like Alan showed us, some of those vapes have 500, 600, 3,000 cigarettes worth of nicotine inside of them. So they're insanely strong, insanely powerful. You can't just quit them, from 1 minute to the next because your brain needs that nicotine because you're used to that big dopamine rush you're getting from it. So sharing information about free quit support and cessation services to all audience helps people make positive changes for their health. South Carolina tobacco youth surveys and youth surveys all across the country show that the majority of teens and adults who used commercial tobacco products want to quit those products. They just don't know how because it's very, very hard because of that grip that nicotine has on their brain. It's important for schools to post multiple resources for students to access. And that's a great way for them to take control of their own health because they can look at that list. They can try to figure out what works best for them and which ones they want to try. And then this is an example of our resources for quitting vaping flyer that we have. There are text message-based programs at the top. There's an Instagram program. There are websites they could visit. There are apps they can download on their phone. And there's good news and bad news when it comes to quitting, right? The good news is that there are a lot of resources out there that are free, that will help you. It will encourage you. It will let you know what to expect. But it's hard because that addiction is so ingrained in our brain. Nicotine affects almost every organ in our body. So it's not even just a brain addiction you have to break. It's a full body addiction. But using one of these resources makes it much more likely that you're able to quit that product. And then our last resource we have is an annual youth conference. We're so fortunate to work with Jessica and her youth in Pickens, and then the fire squad that's in the lower part of the state. And it is a youth conference that is 100% youth-led. We had our first meeting this past April, and every session was youth planned and led. Youth decided what topics they wanted to focus on. They built their presentations. They led their presentations. Our adults literally just helped with the logistics of the event and the youth did everything else. We had over 140 students and educators from around the state gathered together for a great day of education, prevention, and advocacy. We're planning our 2026 or maybe even fall of 2025 conference right now. And we would love for your schools to attend. There's no charge for getting to no charge for attending the conference. You just have to get there. more information about that will be coming out soon. The best way to stay up to date on what's going on is just signing up for our newsletter, because that's where we will announce details about that event. And if you go to our next slide, that's my final slide. We have our QR code for that monthly newsletter. So if you're interested in signing up, you can do so that QR code, so you can make sure that you are attending our youth conference, but also learning more about tobacco and nicotine and what's going on in that world.
Thank you, Tara, so much for sharing the information and the resources from Smokefree, South Carolina. I've learned so much tonight from you and all our presenters. Remember, we will be sharing the slides and a resource guide with many of the resources shared tonight, and also our presenter contact information in an email to all attendees tomorrow. And we will also probably put the resource guide and the contact information sheet in the chat tonight. But now that we're at the end of our presentation, we are going to open it up to your questions and comments, and all of our presenters are here. If you have more information that you would like to learn from them, we have a small group, so I think it would be fine to unmute your mic and ask your question, or you could also put it in the chat.
I had a question, Lorelai, for Alan, if he's there.
I am.
I was just wondering if you have had any experience with, or actually this is for anyone on the panel that may have had experience with advocacy, community advocacy around the vaping, the location of vaping stores near schools and other areas, and whether anyone is familiar at all with any successful community group organizations, things. I mean, Ryan mentioned that some of his parents just went and told folks to take down the gummy picture out of the store, and that seemed to work. But on a larger level, if you're familiar with any organizations or any groups that work on that level.
Well, I would say actually refer back to Smokefree SC in terms of the policies and whatnot. Now, you know, with alcohol, and I think the principal raised a good point about the alcohol. There's specific regulations when it comes to how close outlets can be to schools, to parks, to churches, playgrounds. But it's not as clear when it comes to tobacco, but a lot of these places sell the same products. So thankfully the alcohol comes into play. The alcohol rules come into play. There's also now a kratom law, or kratom, however you want to pronounce it, that comes into play, and it has similar regulations as it comes to alcohol. And a lot of these places that are selling vapes, that are selling the nicotine and cannabinoid vapes, are also selling kratom or kratom. But there's not that I'm aware of, other than just some of the policy things that are being done with Smokefree SC, not on the local level for us. We've had individual instances of, and even myself, of where I go to I'll try to do environmental scans on a regular basis, and it's essentially just going and visiting these places. One is an opportunity to introduce myself, talk to them about merchant education, because one thing that we can do is make sure that they know the law, that you're not supposed to sell alcohol or tobacco products to anyone under the age of 21, and making sure that they know that law. The tobacco law, because the federal law is one thing, but the state law is 18, but the federal regulation is 21. So there's a lot of confusion there, or some disconnect there. But it's just trying to encourage them that it's supposed to, you're supposed to be doing the right thing by this. And again, it's part of this education for us. And so as part of that, when I'm going out and doing these, just meeting and greeting folks and talking about merchant education, I'm also going to say, hey, do you mind if I take pictures, and say, I want to learn more about this. What is it doing? And then sometimes, yes, there's been some situations I see a product, and I'll send that picture to law enforcement and go, hey, do y'all know about this product? And I'll go back to um, Kratom or Kratom. There's a an extract that ran across, and it's the extract itself is in a solution of alcohol. And so we raised that to SLED to go, hey, this is a product that's on the shelves. Um, is this legal? So now it's kind of, from what I've heard, it's kind of stirred up a little bit of a hornet's nest on the state level to go, what's if this if it's a vape shop, should they be selling a product that has alcohol in it? Don't you have to have an alcohol license to sell that? So, long story short, no, there's not a lot out that's tobacco specific on our end. I know Smokefree SC tends to do a lot of that
Yeah,
policy wise.
I can add to that, Alan. Thank you. So we do work with coalitions, Karen. Those are zoning ordinances that need to be passed in communities where there aren't any. And we can either get you connected with an existing coalition in your group or in your area, or if there isn't an existing coalition, then we can help you create one. And we can provide data, talking points, things like that, that you need to have when you're speaking with your city or your county councils about those zoning ordinances. So
not all communities have zoning ordinances.
Oh, no, a lot don't.
Okay.
That's why
Okay.
they're right next door, right across the street from schools, because a lot of them don't have any type of ordinance.
Got it. Thank you.
And as I say, a lot of the pictures that I showed are from their convenience stores and gas stations that are truly, they're 2 or 3 football fields from schools.
Yeah.
And Orangeburg, the fire squad in Orangeburg, they actually just advocated for and got an ordinance passed in Orangeburg about vaping zoning and all of that. So that would be a good connection there if you were interested in learning how they went about that.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Is there a coalition near or in Williamsburg County?
Williamsburg is in the PD region. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes.
So there are a few coalitions in the PD that we work with. They're not specific tobacco focused, but they're just health overall focused,
Okay.
like healthy eating, active living type of
Okay.
initiatives. So we could definitely connect you with that coalition and try to get zoning ordinances on their focus of the next coming year.
Okay. Thank
If
you.
you just want to shoot me an email, I can help make that connection for you.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
How recent was that Orangeburg ordinance passed?
Just a few months ago.
Yeah.
Is there any, I guess, like counties in the Midlands that you all are aware of that still don't have an ordinance?
Very many of them do not.
Yeah, definitely more don't than do.
Yes, more don't than do.
How would you find out if your area has an ordinance or a zoning ordinance?
So that's a good question. We don't have a map for zoning ordinances. We only have a map for smoke-free policies. But since there's so many, cities and municipalities across the state, you would just have to Google your specific city and county and see if there's a zoning ordinance about tobacco products there and proximity to schools. We do have some. I can share a link in the chat. We have resources from some assessments that we've done in schools, or sorry, not schools, but all the counties across the state that focus on promotion and how many tobacco retailers are close to schools. So we have that information, but it doesn't necessarily say that this area has a zoning policy or things like that. So that would just be something that you would have to Google, but I can tell you how many schools in your area are close to a tobacco retailer, things like that.
Do you think if you asked like law enforcement or called the city hall or anything, they wouldn't necessarily know?
They would probably just have to look it up too, like in their in their files.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Do the stores require ID for purchase of those products?
They're supposed to.
They're sup-
Whether they actually do that or not is a different story.
That's exactly it. They're supposed to, but when it comes to tobacco, state law says 18, federal law says 21, and the only way that we can reconcile those and have our state law match federal law is apparently we have to we will have to amend our state constitution to change our state tobacco law to 21. But there are actually like agencies on the federal level that are supposed to be going out and doing compliance checks to make sure that stores are selling to making sure they're enforcing the law. But it's resources. It's not. There's a lot of local activity when it comes to alcohol enforcement, but not nearly as much when it comes to tobacco.
And if they do get caught, it's just it's not a significant fine. It's
Right.
pretty
Wow.
small pittance.
Right.
Wow.
And we don't have a quote unquote tobacco license in the state like alcohol, because if you sell alcohol to underage, there's a penalty to the clerk, but then there's also a penalty to the store owner or the license holder, but there's not the same penalty when it comes to tobacco.
And kids know where to go where they're not IDing as well. They know that this convenience
Exactly.
store doesn't ID, and I'm gonna go get my vape there. And
I've been in shops, watched it happen, to where I know that the student that was a student underage, and they didn't even bother asking for an ID.
And it's also very easy to get the products online.
Yes.
You just have to have an ID that you can upload. Or sometimes you just have to click, yes, I'm over 21. So they're easy to buy online as well.
Where can we find those helpful resources that you spoke of with the state map and any other ordinances that you know of?
So I can share the link to the state map in the chat. That is specifically smoke-free policies. So counties or municipalities that have smoke-free policies is what's on that map, but I can definitely share that. And then on our website, we also have examples of model policies that communities or school districts or college campuses, places of worship, anywhere like that they can use when they're making their model policies. We have a good bit on our website if you just want to share. Oh, well, I just realized I sent the wrong link earlier. Oh, I didn't send the wrong link, but I didn't send it to everyone. So that's the smoke-free policy map. And then let me share this link in the right chat box.
And so what it's going to take is going to take folks who are on this call to become advocates. That's what it's going to have to take. That's as it always. You got to have people speak up and say they want something to happen. They want change to happen.
We have a few more minutes left. Ivy, I had a question for you in your role on the youth board and also as an SIC student member. I'm wondering if there was ever any overlap between the work you're doing with the youth board and maybe some initiatives you might be advocating for on your SIC team.
Okay, it's a good question. So both the SIC meetings and youth board were very important, or are very important to me. And sometimes we had like overlapping things, but since the SIC meetings were during the school day, it made it 10 times easier for me to be able to also do youth board, because that's more of like an after school. We have meetings usually around like 5:30. So it gives us time to do our after school activities and then go to youth board. So it was very easy for me to juggle both. So I would focus more on the SIC meeting while I was at school, and after school I would change gears to youth board.
And a member of our staff does attend the SIC meetings as well, or we try to at least once a month, so that we can remind them that the resource is there for youth board and for behavioral health to refer to us if they need to.
You both make good points about timing of those meetings so that students are able to participate.
I think Jessica and I have both heard this numerous times. If you truly want youth involvement, you've got to hold your meetings when youth can actually be there. Otherwise, you can if you're the otherwise if it's not convenient for them to be there, they're not going to be there. You got to make their involvement convenient and easy for them.
I definitely agree on that. Because with me, I'm involved in a lot of other different things other than the SIC meetings and youth board. I am involved in some sports as well. And just like after school commitments. So Jessica being able to alter like the times that we meet to like fit our schedules helps a lot and allows for us to actually come and engage. But if they were right after school, there's from our district, it would be difficult for everybody to get there right after school, especially with them involved in other things.
Well, thank you everyone for this great discussion. Thank you for our wonderful presenters. If you still have a question after the webinar, you will have the presenter contact information and you may reach out to them and they will answer any other questions that may come up after the webinar. We hope that you will use what you've learned today to initiate vaping cessation programs or projects in your school community and to be advocates for vaping cessation programs as well. Thank you so much for everyone for joining us, and I hope you have a good night.